In the early years of the 20th century, in the segregated city of Tulsa, Oklahoma, there grew a community unlike any other in America, a place of resilience, pride, and prosperity that became known as Black Wall Street. This neighborhood, formerly called Greenwood, was more than just a cluster of businesses. It was a thriving ecosystem built by African Americans who refused to be defined by the limitations of segregation. Barred from white-owned establishments, Black residents built their own. Banks, hotels, barbershops, movie theaters, and even their own hospital stood proudly in Greenwood. By the 19-teens and 1920s, Greenwood was booming. Some called it the Negro Wall Street of America, a name that reflected both its economic strength and its defiance of systemic racism. At the heart of Greenwood was entrepreneurship. Men and women who had once been denied opportunities created businesses that served not only their neighbors, but also customers from surrounding areas. Hotels like the Stratford Hotel stood as symbols of Black success. With over 50 luxurious rooms, it rivaled establishments that many African Americans were not even allowed to enter elsewhere. Doctors, lawyers, and educators made their homes here. Professional excellence flourished, giving Greenwood a reputation for sophistication and progress. For African Americans across the country, Greenwood became a beacon of what was possible, even under the harshest systems of segregation and oppression. But prosperity alone was not enough to shield Greenwood from the racial hostility simmering in America. In 1921, that hostility exploded in one of the darkest episodes of racial violence in U.S. history. It began with an accusation. On May 30th, 1921, a young Black shoeshiner named Dick Rowland entered an elevator operated by a young white woman, Sarah Page. What happened inside remains disputed. Some accounts say Rowland tripped and accidentally bumped into her. Others suggest nothing at all. By the next day, newspapers ran sensational headlines, "Nab Negro for attacking girl in elevator." The story inflamed an already volatile racial climate. As rumors spread, white mobs began to gather outside the courthouse where Rowland was being held. They demanded justice, not in a courtroom, but in the streets. Black veterans of World War I, men who had fought for freedom overseas, now fought to protect it at home. They armed themselves and went to the courthouse to ensure Rowland was not lynched. The standoff between armed Black men and angry white mobs ignited a confrontation. Gunshots were fired, and with that, Tulsa was plunged into chaos. What followed was not just a riot, it was a massacre. White mobs stormed into Greenwood, looting homes, setting businesses ablaze, and killing indiscriminately. Eyewitnesses recalled airplanes flying overhead, dropping incendiary devices and shooting into the streets below. It was one of the first times aerial attacks were used on American soil against American citizens. By the morning of June 1st, Greenwood lay in ruins. Over 1,200 homes were destroyed. More than 35 city blocks had been burned to the ground. Estimates of the dead vary. Some say dozens, others say hundreds. Many victims were never officially recorded, their bodies buried in unmarked graves. Their survivors, men, women, and children, were rounded up and held in internment camps. To be released, Black residents often had to have a white employer vouch for them. Families who had built lives from nothing lost everything in a single night. Generations of wealth vanished in smoke and flames. And yet, the tragedy did not end with the destruction. For decades, the Tulsa Race Massacre was buried in silence. Newspapers downplayed it. Schools never taught it. Survivors were discouraged from speaking out. It was as if an entire city had conspired to erase the memory of what happened in Greenwood. But history has a way of resurfacing. Survivors, refusing to be silenced, shared their stories. Their voices, trembling with both pain and pride, began to remind America of what had been lost. One survivor, Viola Fletcher, who was just a child in 1921, testified a century later before Congress. At 107 years old, she recalled waking to the sounds of gunfire, fleeing her burning home, and living with the trauma for the rest of her life. Her testimony, like that of others, underscored the long-lasting impact of the massacre. The destruction of Black Wall Street wasn't just physical, it was generational. Wealth that could have been passed down, invested, and multiplied was obliterated. The economic gap between black and white Americans widened further. Even as Greenwood tried to rebuild, it was never the same. Businesses struggled, and city policies often stood in the way of full recovery. What made Black Wall Street extraordinary wasn't just its wealth, it was its symbolism. It represented the power of self-determination, the brilliance of black enterprise, and the possibility of thriving even in an unjust society. Its destruction was meant to send a message, but its memory, carried forward by descendants and historians, sends a different one: resilience. Today, the story of Black Wall Street is no longer hidden. Memorials, documentaries, and books ensure that the massacre of 1921 is not forgotten. But remembering is not enough. The legacy of Greenwood demands that America confront its history, acknowledge the injustices, and learn from them. Because the massacre was not just about one neighborhood, it was about the broader struggle for racial equality in America. It reminds us that progress is fragile, and that hatred, if left unchecked, can destroy even the brightest examples of success. The hidden history of Black Wall Street is also a warning. The truth cannot be erased forever. It waits just beneath the surface to be told. And when it is told, as it is now, it challenges us to reflect not just on the past, but on the present. How far have we come since Greenwood? How much further must we go? The survivors asked for recognition. Some asked for reparations. All asked for remembrance. Their fight was not only about rebuilding what was lost, but about restoring dignity and justice that had been stolen. A century later, the struggle continues. The echoes of Black Wall Street still shape conversations about race, justice, and economic inequality in America. The streets may have been burned, but the spirit of Greenwood lives on. In its rise, its destruction, and its legacy, Black Wall Street tells us a story not only of tragedy, but of resilience. And that resilience is the most powerful legacy of all.